This PDST resource aims to provide school leaders, boards of management, and teachers responsible for providing RSE with a suggested outline of the process for creating, updating, and reviewing your school's RSE policy in line with the best practice guidelines. While mandatory RSE has been in place for post-primary students since 2000, a number of circulars have been published to support the best practice of RSE teaching in schools since then. Circular 27/2008 is particularly significant as it outlines the rationale for teaching and learning about RSE in school and the expectation in terms of what needs to be taught. This circular also clearly outlines the responsibility on schools to ensure an RSE policy is in place. It also clearly states in 4.1 that no element of the NCCA RSE interim curriculum can be omitted on the grounds of ethos. RSE classes will provide structured opportunities for students to acquire a knowledge and understanding of human relationships and sexuality through teaching and learning processes that will enable them to form values and establish behaviours in a caring and responsible way. Further insight as to the expectations of RSE provision in schools can be obtained by considering the requirements outlined in the recently implemented Child Protection and Safeguarding Inspections 2019. These inspections include a check with SPHE coordinators, students and parents on their experience of RSE in the SPHE curriculum. Here, in Check 10, we can see what will be monitored by inspectors during a child protection and safeguarding inspection, and the role schools have in realising those expectations. We can see a group of students will also be surveyed and asked about their experience of the RSE curriculum. The creation and sustaining of an RSE policy will ensure a clear roadmap for all stakeholders about how your school manages and implements its RSE provision. The following documents, available on our portal, which we will highlight shortly, will assist you with developing your policy. This video is an adaptation of those documents. While there is a policy template available, we would advise against using this alone when creating or updating your policy, as some elements of the requirements have been updated via circulars since the creation of that template. In particular, there have been changes to child protection procedures and requirements. The Relationships and Sexuality Education Policy Guidelines sets out an 8-step approach to developing an RSE policy. The purpose of this video support is to summarise those key stages for the development of an RSE policy in your school. These guidelines promote a partnership approach among parents, students, teachers, and school authorities. This is a best practice approach which ensures clarity and consensus on how RSE will be taught in your school. The RSE programme designed by staff needs to be based on the policy statement and the RSE curriculum developed by the NCCA. We will now consider the actions taken at each stage in further detail to ensure that clarity and consensus is gathered by all stakeholders. A committee, including representatives of teachers, parents, guardians, and the Board of Management, should be established to develop the policy. Consideration should be given to including junior and senior cycle students on the committee at appropriate stages. To galvanise action and assist with planning, it is recommended that the committee agree on a timeline for completion, and that this be communicated to the Board of Management or school managerial body. Once selected, it is important to ensure that all the members of the committee are clear as to their role and function. For example, when and how to consult with the groups that they represent, and to reflect the views of those groups as accurately as possible to the core group. Step 2 is a vital part of the process and where you will spend most time. The review and research step will enable the committee to get an oversight of current provision in the school as well as develop a clear understanding of the expectations and requirements for RSE provision for every student. Relevant documents to ensure clarity around provision can be found on our SPHE portal, which we will highlight later in the video. Here you will find all relevant support documents and circulars under Resources for Policy Development and Review. We would also recommend that you consider the CPSI requirements in Check 10. When reviewing your current provision, you will need to include a review of the SPHE provision and the extent to which RSE is taught as part of the SPHE programme, as well as the extent to which it is taught in a cross-curricular way or through other subjects such as RE, science, biology or home economics. The minimum requirement for provision is 6 classes of RSE for every student every year. At junior cycle, this takes place in SPHE as this curriculum best supports the teaching and learning of RSE. At senior cycle, where there is no SPHE provision, other arrangements will have to be made for RSE to take place. Other considerations may be: are there any other topics or initiatives which have SPHE or RSE components, such as the TY programme or Wellbeing programme, which will need to be reviewed? Consideration might be given to home school involvement, formal or informal, and list any parent initiatives such as internet awareness talks, etc. Each school will have to consider their own context and the makeup of their school community to ensure each student receives RSE. This may mean considering provision for students with additional educational needs or social, cultural or religious sensitivities. It may mean revising existing systems and the timing of SPHE provision. A school may have to consider the staffing of RSE and training recommendations. At first year, it may be worth surveying students' experience of RSE at primary school, as a post-primary school may have several primary feeder schools and students will be at different levels of understanding, which will impact on teaching and learning of RSE. Under Step 3, in the RSE policy guidelines, you will find a number of suggested headings, which will assist you in preparing the draft policy. While most of the headings are straightforward, we would like to make some recommendations for headings G and H. Heading G, Guidelines for the Management and Organisation of RSE in our school, will require some discussion at committee level. The NCCA RSE curriculum and guidelines outline the content and methodologies to be used in the teaching, learning and assessment of the RSE programmes. It is the task of your policy committee to discuss, in consultation with the school community, how the NCCA curriculum and guidelines are to be implemented in your school. In this context, issues such as confidentiality, parents' rights and responsibilities, including the withdrawal of students, visiting speakers, sensitive issues, may arise. Arrangements regarding the teaching, learning and assessment of the programme and the deployment of staff will be made by the principal. The policy development process allows for issues of concern to each of the participating groups to be raised, discussed and decided upon. In this way, there will be clarity and consensus among all members of your school community on how such issues are to be approached in your school. And the school staff in particular will be guided in approaching these issues when drawing up the school's programme. Heading H, Provide for ongoing support, development and review, is worth noting that it would be important that your policy statement includes provision to support teachers, students, parents and board members involved in RSE at policy and programme level. This could include making a commitment to ensuring access to in-career development opportunities for teachers and the policy committee, support efforts to provide educational opportunities for parents, and to provide relevant RSE school resources. The draft policy statement should spell out how the policy and programme will be reviewed by the partners. It could also state in writing that any amendments necessary as a result of such review will be undertaken. With the approval of the Board of Management, circulate the draft policy and consult with school staff, students, and parents and guardians. Amend the draft policy as necessary in light of this consultation process. When the draft policy statement has been drawn up, the Policy Committee will need to take steps to ensure that it is well advertised amongst the school community. The following processes are recommended. Refer the draft policy statement to the school authorities for approval and dissemination among parents and teachers. Consult parents' views on the draft policy statement, either formally through general or class-based meetings for parents, or informally through meeting parent representatives and the Board of Management, meeting Parents Association representatives, or by sending a copy of the draft policy home and inviting responses. You could also go through the homeschool community liaison teachers, or by offering individual parents the opportunity to respond in person, in writing, or by means of a questionnaire. Consult teachers' views on the draft policy statement. This could be done by general meetings involving all teachers, with additional smaller meetings for teachers most closely involved with teaching RSE. Seek opportunities to involve students as appropriate. This may include meetings with year heads or class tutors, the student council or school prefects, and initiating age-appropriate classroom discussion at post-primary. Discuss all comments, opinions and suggestions received and amend the draft policy statement as appropriate. Present the amended draft policy statement to the school authorities for discussion and approval. Before completion of this stage, your amended policy statement should explain how this statement was drawn up. This would include details on the formation and membership of the RSE Policy Committee, meetings held, people consulted, how the draft was circulated to parents, teachers and the school authorities, some sense of the amendments received, and how the document was reviewed and presented for approval to the school authorities. Present the amended draft policy to the Board of Management for ratification. Make provision for the circulation of the policy to staff, parents, guardians, members of the Board of Management, and arrange to provide it to the parents and guardians of newly enrolled students. Communicate the ratified policy to all members of the school community. This might be done by including a summary statement in students' homework journals and by publishing the policy alongside supporting materials such as the programme outline and supports for parents on the school website under policies. When the school authorities approve the draft document, it becomes the school's Relationships and Sexuality Education Policy Statement. Your RSE programme will be drawn up by school staff in line with the NCCA curriculum and guidelines and your own RSE policy. Best practice guidelines indicate that any new teachers, in particular new SPHE staff, need to be made aware of the policy before teaching RSE. Any external speakers to your school need to be sent a copy of and agree to the remit of the policy before commencing work in your school. Check at regular intervals that the policy is being implemented and identify any issues arising. A coordinator might find it useful to take an informal sample survey of student experience each year and liaise with relevant staff as to the efficacy of the policy. The policy must be reviewed formally every 2 years. Communicate with all stakeholders that the review will take place. Review and evaluate the impact of the policy at a predetermined time, taking into account feedback from the school community and any developments that may have arisen. Revise as necessary in light of the review and evaluation process. The Post-Primary Health and Wellbeing team have created a new website portal page on the main PDST website, and this link is also on the slide. On this portal, there is a range of wellbeing related information in addition to a wide selection of SPHE specific resources to complement teaching, learning and assessment. The webpage is accessible at the address shown on the screen, and you will find all relevant support materials to create and update your RSE policy here under Resources for Policy Development and Review. Further bespoke support in SPHE and RSE is available to you and your colleagues by using the application process outlined here. One of our health and wellbeing advisors can support your school at a pace and path that works for your own school context. All requests must be approved by our principal. By applying in this way, you can avail of support from one of our health and wellbeing advisors in the areas of teaching and learning in SPHE, relationships and sexuality education, teacher wellbeing, and restorative practice. Thank you.